record holder for the most yards ever passing in a single game, Rohan Davey. Emmitt Smith joins us in studio.
It's the first time I played in such a place that had that much noise.
Jock, throw a rock and you'll hit a 3-star cornerback in Louisiana.
Well, Shelly Mullenix has been a big part of LSU football for the better part of 30 years, and in recent years has become very active when it comes to mental health. She's part of a major event coming up at the PMAC. Shelly, thanks for coming down. Great to see you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. You've seen a lot.
I have.
You should write a book one day on the history of LSU football.
Yes, it would have to be on my way out.
Right. You've survived another head coach, so congratulations.
Thank you. Quite an accomplishment. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you got here, Jerry DiNardo was the head coach, so you've worked through Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Ogeron, Brian Kelly, and now the Lane train. Lane Kiffin is...
Absolutely.
You got any early feedback on Lane? Any Lane Kiffin content is a hit these days?
No direct contact or comments or anything other than from Coach Saban, who I spoke to, and he said he'll be great.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take it from him that it's accurate and true.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing him become the new head coach, and just modern medicine too has just changed so much. I mean, I remember being an LSU fan in the Superdome in 1987 when Harvey Williams made a cut on that AstroTurf and his knee was gone, and that meant he was gone for like a year.
Yeah.
Now guys are recovering so much quicker from these injuries, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of new innovation that's gone on. Really, I think Brett Bankston was probably one of the earlier innovators of using that hamstring graft for the ACL, and that changed the game for us, for sure. It allowed us to be able to have a lot more mobility earlier, return them to fuller activity sooner, so they were less sedentary. They didn't tighten up. It didn't have a lot of side effects from that, a lot less swelling, and we were able to get them back quicker, and it's really been an effective procedure for a long time.
Yeah. So many special athletes you've been around coming in and out of the building, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
You have any, like, off the top of your head, like, I always think of Leonard Fournette, like, he was a freak. Like, he shows up on campus, the guy's a freshman, he looks like he's 40 years old.
Yeah.
Tyrann Mathieu for his size, the things he was able to do.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that come to my mind. You mentioned one, but Anthony Johnson, like Leonard, was just an enormous human being. As a freshman, I just couldn't figure it out. There was no way that those quads were related to a freshman, but here we are. Did a great job for us. It's interesting, the seat that I was in and the view that I took of a lot of the student athletes early. You mentioned even Tyrann, and I remember a really specific moment in the summertime. So after his breakout freshman year, we were coming off of practice in the summertime drills, and he had just gotten his hair done up in the mohawk look. And I remember, for whatever reason, my first thought was, this is not going to be good. I really did come at these athletes with that perspective. Like, I just would look ahead to what I thought that could create, and then always try to kind of tamp it back as best I can for them.
What was the first nickname you got? I read about this. Was it Ryan Clark gave you?
I was Mama Shelly, for sure.
But before that, there was like some Auntie.
Brady James called me TT.
There you
short
go.
For Auntie. Yep.
Yeah. So you went from aunt to.
Someone has called me grandmother. Someone has called me grandma. So that's when I took a step back, and I thought, what, it's time. It's time to take a step back. Yeah.
Well, if I look back on pictures, you haven't aged much. I think you've, as far as LSU football ages people, you're doing pretty well.
Yes, thank you. I agree with that.
Yeah. And all the great teams. So you've seen 3 national champions. You've seen another team that played for a national title.
Yeah. So 2011. That was a really great year. It was a tough game to watch.
Yeah. A great season that didn't end so well, but a great team.
Yeah.
I guess you and Tommy Moffitt, you might be, and Jack Marucci, you might be some of the few that were there for all 3 of the titles.
Yeah. We all worked really closely together. It was very helpful, obviously, to have that long-term view of each other and how each of us worked, so that we can kind of play off the needs that were, in the training room and in the weight room. I think it's important to have that really good connection, communication, and relationship.
Well, I think as we all learn, people that are 110 pounds can't get out there and play football for the most part, unless they kick maybe or whatever.
Right.
But what goes on right here is so important, and you've played a major role in that. You were on campus in '98 when an LSU football player took his own life, correct?
Yes.
And that kind of maybe started your passion for this.
Yeah, I think I was actively involved and engaged with the student athletes and did a lot of talking, a lot of supporting, as an athletic trainer typically does. But that was probably something that that tipped me to the other side, where either I wasn't doing enough. I mean, I remember feeling that I missed something. Something that people say all the time, I think, when they experience a loss like that. And then I also really remember thinking that I didn't want his loss to be in vain, and that I would, just continue to really kind of do this work and do it as best I could. And then Coach Saban came in town. Mm-hmm. So that was what pushed it over the top for me.
Well, Coach Saban has a degree in psychology, doesn't he?
He thinks he does. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I've heard that, and it's become reality.
He might. He's obviously really brilliant, and he was way ahead of his time in terms of the way he approached student athletes in order to get them, to produce the way they needed to produce, both in the classroom, on the field, not in life. So he was really special from that standpoint.
Well, and special from the aspect of us in the media, we hype things, we make things big, we want to build things up, and his job was the opposite of that, because in his eyes it created anxiety, it got guys to freeze up and not perform the way they can perform.
Yeah. Should be nothing special about any one game. They're all the same.
Yeah.
Looking at scoreboards, do your job, keep your eyes off the board was pretty much all you heard. Right.
And in the other sport now, the hardball, Jay Johnson, who's won 2 national titles in 3 years, he believes a lot of the same kind of things. The low heartbeat, he makes every game big. It's a 1-game playoff. He calls every game, so they all stay the same. And when you go to Omaha, you don't be shaking in your boots.
Yeah, I think I saw a statement a couple days ago from Jake, or maybe it was yesterday, where basically they go into a game thinking that they're acting like you're number 1, but actually playing like you're number 2. Yeah. And I think that's a really brilliant way to kind of go into it. The expectations are there, whether you hype it up or not. These kids at this elite level, are going to kind of create that monster in their head anyway, and so that anything you can do to kind of just tamp that back and just ask them to do what they do best, which is just to perform. Yeah. We'll get the most out of that.
I've spoken to Verge Osbury, who of course is now the athletic director and of course played at LSU and has been basically working there for almost, I think, longer than what they credit him for. I think they said he worked there 30 years. I think you've been like 40.
At least 30 years.
Yeah. And we've talked about this over the years, about how in years past we weren't equipped to deal with the mental challenges. One guy we talked about was Cecil Collins in '97, who has gone through ups and downs, and right now he's on the major up. He's got a family. He lives in Prairieville. He's got a great job. He's come out of it. But Verge said, 1997, we weren't equipped to deal with the things he was dealing with.
Right. I think that these athletes, male and female, have always really been dealing with these things. It's just that maybe they were never talked about. For some of this, like, drug testing, if you're part of the NCAA system, you're going to be doing drug testing. So a lot of stuff gets uncovered in drug testing. Then you have a choice as an administration to either open your eyes to that or actually close your eyes and not worry about that part. And I think there are a lot of colleagues that I know, a lot of schools that I know that just opt to not look at that part of the picture. And I think anyone who's got any kind of family, friend, whatever, who's got any kind of substance use in their history knows that turning your head's not a good idea. The problems just don't technically go away. And so whether it is, substance use or depression or anxiety, whatever those things may be, they linger under the surface, and you can ignore them and they can just continue to kind of slow simmer, or you can address them. And I think people tend not to want to address it because it's like bringing the cat out of the bag and, creates more stuff. But the student athletes really can't operate with that slow simmer for very long.
Yeah. Another thing Verge said was they see the team run out of the tunnel. They don't see what it took to get them there.
Yeah.
And in many cases, we think of LSU as a fantasy land, like Disneyland, where dreams come true and everyone's happy, and at Tiger Stadium, Ellick Box, Deaf Dome, whatever. But they have problems like everyone else has problems. People pass away. They're dealing with the same stuff we are.
Yeah. I think about my own experience when I got here. I think I was 27, so I lost my grandmother when I was probably 30. I found out about it while I was in the training room. I remember kind of falling apart in the moment and needing to kind of gather myself and get back to my job. I mean, that's a highly technical skill to be able to do, is just to bottle up those kinds of things that happen. But you're right, everyone's got, a grandparent that's passing away, an aunt, an uncle that's got something going on, cancer. We've really seen that all. We've seen it in the training room. I mean, with our own student athletes with cancer. Those are all real life scenarios that we have to be able to manage, and you can't just pat someone on the back and say it's going to be okay, because in their world it's not going to be okay. And our job's not to convince them that it will be okay, but to let them experience that feeling and work through it, and then they can actually feel resilient after the fact because they've worked through something that was difficult.
Yeah. And in recent news, obviously, Kyron Lacey.
Yeah.
Controversial subject. Whatever happened in Thibodeau before that red light and everything, regardless, he should still be here.
Sure.
And those are the kind of things, I'm sure, when you get that news, that's what really.
Yeah, to me, it's crushing. And then again, thinking back to my own experience with Kyron. Kyron wasn't my student athlete. I was already in administration at the time. But I walked by Kyron Lacey 3 times in the hallway by the weight room and said hi, made eye contact. And then my thought afterwards, again, was, why didn't I ask more? I mean, I sit here and teach that. We talk about that, when we talk about mental health and programming. And he would have said, I'm fine. And in my role as an athletic trainer in the past, I would have said, you don't look fine. Or if I'm you, I'm not fine. How are you possibly fine with what's going on? I mean, I would kind of dig in a little bit and push, because I think it's so easy just to be able to kind of keep it surface level with people, even if you're connected. Because if you're connected with someone, but you don't want to hurt their feelings or scare them, you say everything's fine. So as the recipient of this information, I've got to be able to bring myself to the table calm and understand that what they might tell me is going to be tragic. And I've got to be able to take that in and help them through that moment. So I think that a lot of these things are, whether they're preventable, we'll never know, but they're certainly manageable, and you manage it by having real conversations and talking to people about it.
Yeah. Well, growing up in Louisiana, like, LSU sports is a natural drug you get hooked on, and it's part of your childhood memories, and you remember the games. Like, I remember Earthquake game, Kevin Falk, whatever it is. But as much as I love this stuff, I'm fearful that the intensity of it has gotten way too high. Yeah. And I don't have my cell phone, but it's the greatest and worst creation we've ever had. Sure. I can get my email. What's the temperature outside? I can keep up with current events, but then the social media aspect of it, which, let's be honest, they're pressured to create a brand and be relevant on there, but at the same time, block out the noise and ignore the nasty language they may get if they don't play as well as they want to. Yeah. It's I do feel for them, and people say, oh, they're making money and this and that. Look, they're still young people, and humans have feelings, and no one likes to be attacked.
Right. Yeah, I'll leave names out of this example, but this goes back to 2010, 2011. So we had phones then, but they were probably not very advanced. But a specific student athlete that was really struggling with, I think at the end of the day, probably struggling with anxiety, but really wanting to do right by everybody, would say literally that every text message that came into his phone or everything that came through DMs, he would respond to. And that he would be up all night doing that. And that was him just trying to maybe be better than, someone in his past that didn't do that for him. I mean, so he was trying to be superhuman, and he's not superhuman. You just mentioned, we're just human. We're not special. And someone like that really couldn't keep up. And then the question is, what do you do when you can't keep up? And that's where the road kind of splits. You either engage in activities that are going to be helpful, whether it's talk therapy, yoga, going to lunch with friends, whatever, putting your phone down, whatever it may be, or you go down this road that's hard to really dig out from. But I mean, that's from 2010. That's 16 years ago. Yeah. So it's not new. But yeah, the impulsive behavior, I think, is something that I often think about. Is just the quick response. So our phones were trained to be kind of quick on the response and quick on the reaction time. And so the same thing happens when we're living life and things happen. Our first response is to do something right away. And in the world of mental health, that immediate thing is not necessarily what's best for us.
Well, I've read about it, and I'm certainly no scientist, but I've heard about chasing dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Like Facebook, how many likes am I getting on this post? And it's a quick shot of adrenaline that does not last.
Right. I'll give you my one story that I didn't even go viral, but I claimed it was viral because for me it was super viral. When we beat Auburn away, I wish I could tell you the year because I'm not great with the years.
Cole Tracy, the field goal?
Yeah, I think that was it actually.
2018.
Go. It would have been. Well, it may have been. That would have been probably my second to last year. I remember going to the locker room and everyone was already celebrating in the locker room, and I had my phone on, and I just kind of put it up in there, and I'm not really big on that. Private moments are important to me for these guys, but for whatever reason, at that moment, I remember just kind of scanning it and looked at it, and I pressed send. I presume it was on Facebook since that's mostly what I'm on. And it just, it was like a slot machine. And I was watching it, and then we got on the airplane, and when I got off the airplane, it was at 10,000. I thought, that's crazy. And I remember being up late that night watching that because I was just in awe. I can only imagine if that happens to me once a week. It's a total dopamine hit. And I remember feeling that. And then when you don't get it, I'm not worried about not getting it because I never get that kind of attention. But for someone who's used to getting that and then fails to get that, that 20,000 mark, I don't know what threshold would even be, but they failed. They failed with 20,000 people giving them a thumbs up. That's crazy to me. I would have been thrilled having 100 people give me a thumbs up.
Right.
And so it's never enough. And so it just continues to build on itself. And you end up losing yourself in that whole picture. And you're really doing it then for a different purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it loses its magic. So we talk about, Tiger Stadium and LSU athletics is, being magic for people. Our job as the administrators and as the coaches, athletic trainers, all those people are to keep that magic alive. And part of that is being able to balance their experience. Yeah.
And also, when you're at LSU, hey, it's a great thing of all the great players that have come there, but there is pressure when you're Garrett Nussmeier and you're following up Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels who have won 2 Heisman trophies, or a wide receiver that's trying to be the next Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson or on down the line.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work. Some people naturally can rise to that kind of space. Joe Burrow was really exceptional in that. I didn't think anything would really ever bother him. Really, and Matt Flynn would probably disagree with this, but Matt was the same way. Rohan probably would disagree with me, but Ro was the same way. They thrive in that kind of environment. And that's great. And there's nothing wrong with not thriving in that environment. That just means it takes a little bit extra work. They've got to be able to put in that extra work to be able to kind of bring their heart rates down, being able to focus, being able to plan. They'd have to do a little bit more than maybe some of the other athletes. But it takes work, and they have to know that ahead of time. So the coach's job is to really prepare them for that it's not going to just be natural. You don't walk in here and it's just not natural. I know Jay talks about that all the time. This takes work.
Right. Yeah, and it is kind of hilarious to me when I hear the LSU fans, they're the best fans in the world, and then the block out the noise, we don't care about what anybody says outside of this building.
Yeah, right.
So it's finding that. It's a tricky dance sometimes.
Right. Yeah, and for a kid too, that's doesn't make sense to be able to see both those worlds.
And from this, and also, we grew up, if you're a man, it's different. I'm just going to go to the show Sopranos. You watch Sopranos?
I have.
So Tony Soprano, he's the big mob boss, and he's petrified if anybody finds out he's seeing a shrink because men are supposed to be tough. We don't see psychiatrists. Right. What's wrong with you type thing.
Yep.
I think Archie Manning, I watched the Book of Manning, his father dealt with things that I think took his own life, if I'm not mistaken, and men didn't smile in pictures and all that, right? Yeah. So we are now in a new era where you've got to, if you're a male athlete, say, hey, dial down your testosterone. It's okay for you to, see somebody, talk to somebody, your mental health.
Yeah. I'll challenge you a little bit that it's not just the men. It's the
sure.
women too, but I hear you. I mean, certainly we expect something from the men. We don't expect them to ask for help. We don't expect them to falter at all. And the women we're emotional. We need to, you need to talk to someone to get the drama in control. But it's really all the same stuff. So we see it on both sides. The one way that we always tried to sell it early on was, if you got an appointment, you were the lucky one. So when we had an incredible psychiatrist that we used to bring in that would help us with some programmatic work, and he would see some of these kids in football. And I would have kids that would come up to me and say, how come I'm not on the list? Why am I not on the list this time? Because it became then a thing that you wanted to be on that list. So you wanted to be able to have the 30-minute conversation or the hour conversation with him because it was so unique. It was really about building your confidence, manipulating your coach in a way that the coach will get what he wants and you can still get what you want. I mean, it's tricky mind games, but it's really preparing people to be leaders. And so depending on how we couch it to them, some of them are all about it. We've had a lot of football players go see our mental health providers because they were leaders. They were trying to figure out how to motivate someone else on the team. A kid that's not doing something right. How do I say that to them? They trust these people. They're it's conversations that are private. They're not disclosing these conversations to anybody. They're not reporting back to the coach that this kid's concerned about X, Y, Z. They're managing it with this kid. And so if you can just, twist it around enough and normalize it that really people are asking for help and that those people are really excelling beyond the norm, then all of a sudden the people that see themselves as already, perfect might say, I'll give it a try. What harm can it do? And some of them don't like it, and that's fine. They don't have to come back for seconds. Mm-hmm. But I think that, again, my thought was that as someone is, 17, 18, 19 years old, having that exposure to the mental health piece is so critical because it's going to be something they're going to have to lean on later on in some way, shape, or form. Why not expose it to them right now when they're most impressionable? And if you can remove that stigma associated with that right now and have them have a good experience with mental health, then they're more inclined to go again down the road when they might want it or need it.
You have a great event coming up. Rain Will Bring Flowers Foundation will host its third annual Planting Seeds of Hope mental health awareness event. If you're watching this before Tuesday, February the 24th of 2026, it's at 6 p.m. at the PMAC, and it is totally free to get in. And if you're watching this after the event, well, we're going to tell you about what the event is, and I'm sure you can read more up on it. But I was looking at your guest, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is there, certainly the 2019 national champion hero, one of them, game at Alabama, for sure, when he ran through the Crimson Tide that day. Yep. But at the end of 2018, he had a life-changing event where he was basically defending himself, and someone unfortunately died, and he's had to carry that with him and try to move through that each day.
Yeah. If you know Clyde the way I felt like I knew Clyde and know Clyde now, it'd be hard to get through that kind of moment if you were even a bad person. But this is a really good human being. He's got actually, a father who's been in the force, for some time, and he knew, he was brought up well, brought up right, was put in a bad situation. Clearly had to defend it. It was with another athlete as well. And I don't know how you go to sleep the next day when you know that you've taken someone's life, someone who he had no ill towards, prior to this event, and so that's a lot. It's a lot to hold, and I fast forward pretty quickly to their celebration in Kansas City after the Super Bowl win that they had, and there was a shooting, and the story that I got about that event was that Clyde grabbed onto this little kid who got separated from his dad, shielded this kid, and I remember praying out loud, thinking I really hope that Clyde understands that that's somehow, to fill his heart back up, make himself whole again, that he can save someone, in a situation. Again, didn't know this kid. It was, he was in the right place at the right time to be able to protect him. But you need, I think you need someone sometimes to be able to walk you through those feelings. Like, is it possible that second event made you feel somehow better emotionally. In the absence of talking about it again, I don't know where that goes, for Clyde. If you don't talk about it, maybe it just triggers PTSD for Clyde. When it's really an event that doesn't need to trigger PTSD, it actually can be a healing thing for him. But if you're not able to put those things together and use the right techniques and therapy to be able to, patch those holes up, then it could be another event that just leads to more tragedy for him. So it's, it's really an opportunity, I think, to be able to, for this event specifically, Planting Seeds of Hope, allow Clyde the opportunity to be able to answer some of those questions for himself. This is, for me, less about what the audience is going to hear and more about Clyde being able to kind of be okay and be surrounded by other people who he knows love him regardless. Yeah. In the absence of any kind of championship or any kind of Super Bowl, whatever, MVP, that you're just human. Again, and so having these elite athletes on the stage to do a panel conversation is really meant to show the world that, again, that they're normal individuals. They have all these feelings. Ryan himself was with me at the time that we lost the athlete. So the athlete that he often talks about in loss is the one that I was working with as an athletic trainer. And he was hit by it as well. What could he have done? He talks about how he manages that. So it's really just about having these open conversations with people who've experienced some type of loss, who feel hopeless, who feel isolated, to recognize, to look around literally in the PMAC, and you're surrounded by 2,500 people, 3,000 people that are there just to really be supportive.
Yeah. Well said. In 2019, when their football team's going that magical run, we did a feature on Clyde. We interviewed his mother, and he's got two fathers, basically. His biological had to go away to prison and then come back, and then the man that married his mother, all three, all invested and love Clyde. Yeah. But once again, this storybook season, they were telling me that it's 2 a.m. and he's awake, he can't sleep. These are things he's dealing with after the fact. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to the stories that I would never disclose. I would hope at some point he can disclose them because in time for himself to be able to heal. But times are really a challenge. They're a challenge at night at 2 o'clock when you're not sleeping, and you just feel like the walls are kind of closing in on you. Clyde was very open though to being able to listen and ask for help. So kind of circling back to the beginning of your conversation about being a man, I would see Clyde, as a man tenfold to some other people that I've worked with over the years who just chose other ways to manage their pain. Mm-hmm. People just kind of, do what I think they feel comfortable doing. Our job again at LSU in athletics is to really make them feel and help them believe that the relationships that they have with us are real. I think that is something that's actually pretty unique in our setting, having, some of us, you mentioned Tommy Moffitt and Jack being there for so long. Mm-hmm. Those guys still call. They still call and they say, hey, my doctor is wanting me to take this medicine. I ain't taking that medicine. I'm like, well, what is the medicine? And they'll tell me. And I'm like, well, let's talk about that medicine for a second. Yeah. So to know that you can have a kid who is 18 who's calling you when they're 36 and then calling you about their son is just, is the greatest feeling in the world. And it lets us know that having those real conversations when they're young do hold some weight and allow them to be able to have an open door for us when they need us.
Yeah. And then on the female side of things, like, I always talk about gymnastics and how can they land on a 4-inch beam,
right?
Like flip and not see their feet. And when Haley Bryant's got a year left and everyone says, well, why wouldn't she come back? I'm like, well, maybe she's tired of being stressed the heck out, trying to get up in front of 13,000 people and do all this stuff, right? Yeah. And so, and then women's basketball, it used to be the good news is nobody cares, the bad news is nobody cares. But then when it's rim to rim for the South Carolina game, and they fight hard, they don't quite come out on top.
Yeah. I think about with specifically basketball because I know it's been something that has been used a lot in terms of the mental health side, but being in the flow is something that's super important. You're talking about mental health state, right? So we talk about that with no embarrassment. Let's talk about it like everything else. But when I think about a Haley, I think about all the gymnasts again that have been around forever, Ashley, Claire Carnio, who I work with now, to basketball players, even watching, Flage and Michaela and all the girls just kind of throw up a three, and it just slices through the basket with no touching the rim at all. They're in a flow, right? And you could be in a flow for a part of a game. You can get out of your flow, and the trick would be to pull yourself back in and one, experience what it feels like to be in the flow, so that you can actually understand that's a really unique mental state. But these girls can do anything on a beam, whether it's 2-inch beam or 4-inch beam, if they're in a flow, right? So it's really about getting their mind right for that particular event. There's a lot of stuff they do in preparation for that. They're preparing for it obviously all week, but part of that is, again, we talked about sleep for Clyde, but like sleeping. I mean, you can't do that work if you're not getting good sleep. You're not getting good sleep if you're, up playing video games at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it helps bring things down and slows down things for you. You're not going to be your best if you're up at 1 a.m.
Yeah, and not to stress yourself out, but it feeds on itself. I don't get a good night of sleep. I wake up, I'm stressed about not getting a good night of sleep. So I'm sure hoping, boy, I better get a good night's sleep this next night. And then 2 nights becomes 3 nights, and
right.
and but if you get that one good night of sleep, I feel good, and then the good feelings kind of domino in the positive direction too.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. We mentioned I mentioned too, like the things that you did then artificially to help get you back into that mode. And I hate to always bring it back to the stuff, but this is kind of where my brain, space, but that my brain works in. But I would have known in the past that maybe a glass of wine at the end of that 3rd day of not sleeping will help, because I generally would assume that that's the case. Again, these are young people that are out on their own for the first time, away from their parents, right? Have access to a lot. They've got to have their own brakes on, or else they're going to, use the way they want to use. So helping them understand too that you add the additive effect of then doing these other things to help counteract it, right? I need to go to sleep, so I take this pill or smoke this. It just adds on to the problems and the pressure. But in the moment it feels right? Because it does solve the problem, but it's always a temporary fix. And so it's just super important to always be aware of those things and address them really openly, so that they understand it's just a regular conversation. There's nothing secret about me talking about whether or not you needed to smoke last night. I'm just asking you because there are things that actually can cause that you're not thinking about, that we want to talk about.
Yeah. I think, do I sound like I've read about this? 2 glasses of wine before bed is the 3 a.m. alarm clock, what I was told.
Yeah.
You'll go to sleep quicker, but you're not going to maintain the sleep. You're going to wake up.
Well, and for us in athletics too, everyone needs that really good restorative recovery sleep. I'm guessing that if I were working in a different world and I wasn't making money or my career off my body in terms of a sport, it wouldn't matter so much. But when you don't get your body to go through the restorative sleep portion of the night, the muscle memory doesn't work well, so bouncing on that balance beam the next day is just not going to happen. You're not getting the restorative sleep. You're not being able to transfer the information you learned that day to the part of the brain that's going to retain that information. So when you're getting coached the day before, you're not going to have that readily available and easily pull it out of your brain when you need it, when you're not sleeping well.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm not sleeping at 49 like I was at 19. No. That's not your problem, though. No. You remember that when it was like 9 o'clock in the morning was getting up early, know? When 8 hours seemed like you could go 10, 12 if you wanted to.
Yeah. I miss the Saturdays, waking up at, 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Right.
It's been about 40 years since I've done that.
Well, all right. Well, let's wrap up here. Let's tell people why they should come out. Certainly, you've got musical performances by American Idol finalist John Foster. He'll be there. You've got a keynote speaker with a U.S. Army combat veteran. And like you said, it's free to get in, and so this is kind of the television soundbite portion where this is what we'll run on television. But seriously, just what would you tell people about coming out for this event?
Well, the one thing that I've taken away from the last 2 years has been expecting for it to be, some type of educational talk about mental health or suicide. I leave there being just enthusiastic and hopeful for the future. I think that hearing conversations from other people who people admire, who people perceive as having no problems at all, lots of wealth, lots of whatever, and they tell you about their stories, you realize you're actually just like them. I think having that information, seeing other people go through it, hearing their stories, allows you to understand that you're not alone. And, in the opposite of, feeling, I think, isolated, which is how people feel, and having this just super amount of pain, I think that night lifts the pain off a little bit for people. It will give them some real resources on what to do in a moment. It gives a parent, it gives a coach, it gives teachers a few lessons on how to ask the questions, what to say, in a real kind of way, so that you get a response that actually is meaningful, and not just that whole I'm cool, I'm good, because that's what we're so used to having. And a lot of times too, when you hear those kind of answers, you're like, okay, good. This night is about hearing those stories, knowing what else we can do. But I think just showing up for each other, just being there. Like, what else are we going to do there's a lot of stuff you could do on a Tuesday night, I would think. Even in the area of LSU, there's a lot going on that night. I would challenge everyone to stop by between 6 and 7. It will be life-changing. It is every year. It's been a life-changing event. We hear stories from parents on their way home that their kid opened up to them in a way they never had before. If that happens in only one car for the night, I think that our community being there to support that one kid that did that is a win.
Yeah. Well said. Well, we just put Mardi Gras to bed, so we've had all our good times. So this is kind of a time of year for a lot of people to get a little more serious, a little more self-reflective, and I think the timing of it's perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
A non-judgment zone, right?
No judgment. Lots of fun, good food, free T-shirts, good songs. It's really good athletes, people that I think everyone can relate to. I think also, our focus continues to be for student athletes. We talk about this all the time, that rates of suicide are epidemic. Second leading cause of death in Louisiana in our youth is suicide. Second leading cause of death in athletes, NCAA athletes, is suicide. So there's a lot of overlap there, but bringing in the veteran angle is a super important part too. I see the veterans as just being the same kind of warriors as our athletes. If you've ever worked with, you mentioned this, if you've ever worked with these athletes, you realize it's not just about running through the goalpost. There's a whole lot of warrior work going on before then. And so that group is no different to us than our veterans, our first responders, our firefighters, all the people that are put in a scenario where they have to perform in a life or death situation every single day. And so from that perspective, really, we're still all the same. We keep on going back to that. It's all the same. It's just a different angle on a story. I think that this year's Planting Seeds of Hope will open the door for a broader audience to be able to kind of understand that that's true. That again, no matter where you come from, what your situation is that you still are human.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really good that you involve the veteran, because I've done charity work with Red Rock and Blue. We give money to Louisiana military charities, and I think there's a charity, they have 22 in their name, and basically it signifies there are 22 veterans take their lives every day that have come back from Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever the case may be, over the years.
Yeah, it's profound. I mean, again, I've got half my side of my family is military, and I've been in a scenario where no one wants to talk about it, and I understand not wanting to talk about their experiences, and I certainly wouldn't want to push them to talk about their experiences, but in the absence of really talking about it, it just continues to kind of stew, and I think that's where we lose people, is that space where they don't want to talk about it, where somehow it's not normal to cry, to feel a certain kind of way. It's not going to be normal to not cry. It's not normal to not feel those feelings, and I would say that anyone that says that that's not normal or doesn't want you to cry on them, you don't need to be around them, because anyone who's not allowing you to express your full self is really not worth wasting your time on. And the veterans, I'm sure, brought up in a culture that is absolutely against that type of emotional freedom. And so we've got to bring it back once they're back with us to the realities that they have to be able to kind of talk through those things. You're not meant to be able to kind of struggle alone with those visions and those thoughts and experiences.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it was the late great Jim Valvano, right, at that legendary speech where he said you should laugh, you should be moved to tears each day.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to connect with someone who can't be real with me, which is again why I loved being an athletic trainer for the time that I was, because whether I was forcing on the athletes or not, they felt comfortable enough to be able to kind of tear up. I mean, you know, I could say a couple things during taping an ankle, and I look up and the person's quiet because they're tearing up, and I don't even know what I said that made them feel that way. But giving them that space to be able to have done that, to feel that for the moment, you know, a coach that was uneducated in the space would say, don't let this athlete come out there after you just did that. And then meanwhile, the athlete will go out there after just doing that and have a practice like he's never had before, because we've just lifted it off his shoulders.
Right.
That's a really hard concept for people to understand. Timing is super important. I get it, but you know, just when you think the timing is right for you, it's not right for the kid. Yeah.
Shelly, it was great to speak with you.
Yeah, you bet.
Great to visit with you. I hope you have a wonderful event, and I hope you write that book when you retire.
Do you know an editor? You could find one?
I think you can find one a lot quicker than I can, I'm sure.
I probably can.
Yeah. So great talking to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Shelly Mullenix here on JACQUES Talk. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you later.